لكم والله بما تعملون عليم. ليس عليكم جناح أن تدخلوا بيوتا غير مسكونة فيها متاع لكم والله يعلم ما تبدون وما تكتمون. قل للمؤمنين يغضوا من أبصارهم ويحفظوا فروجهم ذلك أزكى لكم إن الله خبير بما يصنعون. وقل للمؤمنات يغضضن من أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها ولا يضربن بمخرهن على جيوبهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا لبعولتهن أو آبائهن أو آباء بعولتهن أو أبنائهن أو أبناء بعولتهن أو إخوانهن أو بني إخوانهن أو بني أخواتهن أو نسائهن أو ما ملكت أيمانهن أو التابعين غير أولي الإربة من الرجال أو الطفل الذين لم يظهروا على عورات النساء ولا يضربن بأرجلهن ليعلم ما يخفين من زينتهن وتوبوا إلى الله جميعا أيها المؤمنون لعلكم تفلحون. وأنكحوا الأيام منكم والصالحين من عبادكم وإمائكم إن يكونوا فقراء يغنهم الله من فضله والله واسع عليم. وليستعفف الذين لا يجدون نكاحا حتى يغنيهم الله من فضله والذين يبتغون الكتاب مما ملكت أيمانكم فكاتبوهم إن علمتم فيهم خيرا وآتوهم مما لله الذي آتاكم ولا تكرهوا فتياتكم على البغاء إن أردنا تحصنا لتبتغوا عرض الحياة الدنيا وما يتركهن فإن الله من بعد إكراههن غفور رحيم. ولقد أنزلنا إليكم آيات مبينات ومثلا من الذين خلوا من قبلكم وموعظة للمتقين. الله نور السماوات والأرض مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح المصباح في زجاجة الزجاجة كأنها كوكب دري يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء ويضرب الله الأمثال للناس الناس والله بكل شيء عليم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال صدق الله العلي العظيم.
I want to thank you guys for allowing me to talk. In many ways, I stopped talking. I don't really give talks no more. But since you guys are on the other side of the pond, I figured that, you weren't tired of me. You may not know me. And the topic of Malcolm X is extremely important to me, that I'm doing some work at Yuri Kochiyama. So, but before I start, I wanted to read the translation of what the brother read in Arabic for Surah An-Nur, for those who may not know Arabic and everything. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu Nur Samawati wal Ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The similitude of his light is as a niche wherein is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass. The glass is as it were a shining star, lit from a blessed tree, the olive, neither east nor west, whose oil grows forth of itself, though fire did not touch it. Light upon light. Allah guides unto his light whomsoever he wills. And Allah sets forth parables for people. Allah is aware of all things. And I wanted to start with that because this ayat right there automatically, what it is, it refers to, to me, it's important to understand light and the concept of light in conjunction with Malcolm X, right? And we have to look at the law says he's the light, and he guides to whom the light to whom he wills. And when I look at Malcolm's life, and as you read Autobiography, because I teach Autobiography, if you can keep the notion of light and Malcolm being guided by God's light as very, very intrinsic in the book. So the one ayat verses I like is Allah says, Allahu ladina amanu yukhrijahum min az-zulumati ila nur. When it says, Wa ladina kafaru awliya tagut yukhrijahum min an-nur ila zulumat. And I like those ayats from ayat to Corsi, because first it talks about walayat. And I think walayat is important to understand because walayat is the guardian that guides you. But what we see in this ayat is, it says, Allah guides those who believe from zulamat ila nur. Zulamat is darkness, but really zulamat is plural, meaning levels and veils of darkness. I mean, there's no one darkness. Darkness is something that has levels. But it says it guides from darknesses to nur. Nur is single. So it guides from darknesses to light. So there's many forms of darknesses, but there's only one light. But then it says, on the other hand, those who follow those who are tagut, those who are evil, those who have negativity, that guides people from nur, light, to darknesses. And I say it because I just want to reflect before I talk about Yuri and Malcolm. I want to reflect on the verses, the chapters 8, 9, and 10 that you're reading. And as you go through the book, I have this idea of a parable of looking at Malcolm's life, and I imagine him in a room. So imagine Malcolm's in a room. And he's called Satan. So obviously this room is dark. He's in a dark room with Zulamat and all this darkness. So from the beginning of the book, now that you get from the criminal Malcolm and you get into 8, 9, and 10, where he's in jail and he's Satan, think about him, that he's in this world of darknesses. And there's a door. And you know how under the door you can see like light? And so when he starts to read and study, Malcolm all of a sudden mind starts to open. So as you read it, he's going to open up his mind. He says reading literacy opens his mind. And to me, that open the mind is like him seeing a light at the bottom of the door. And when you see a light at the bottom of the door, he goes through and says, let me go to that door. I don't want to be in darkness. So he takes a step into the next light. So now Malcolm walks into the next room. To me, that's room number 2, which you're going to study. That's the Nation of Islam. So he's learned about blackness. He's learned about the white man. He's learned about America. He's learned about how his situation is. But he's not no longer Satan. He becomes Minister Malcolm, and he's in this room of light. But as we know, in that room of light, Malcolm starts to think that Elijah Muhammad, he is the Prophet Muhammad. He starts thinking God, Allah is a man. This not the most lit room, is it? So he goes from a dark room to a more lit room. But Malcolm, in his journey, in his travel, going from light and journeying, he sees another door in that room. And he sees at the bottom it has light. So what does Malcolm do? He's looking for truth. He lets the light guide him to the next room. And what is that next room? To me, that next room is Mecca, going to Hajj. And when he goes to Hajj, he learns true Islam. You look at the beauty of the ayat. Allah says, I guide to my light whom I will. Allah says he is light. He is the grand architect of the universe. But little by little, if you're darkness, if your life is messed up, don't mean you can't go to the light, but you got to be wanting to move to the light, and Allah blesses you to go from the light. So I ask people all the time, okay, fine. Malcolm went from darkness. He went to the nation, which is the lighter room. He gets to the third room, Islam. It's lit up. He's in Islam. He's at Mecca. And my question is it possible to see another light inside you Muslim? What other door can have a light? It's thin light, because you can't, when you're light that's bright, you might not see the thin light, but is there another door to go through? Is there another door of light? And Malcolm was blessed by Allah that in his journey, he went to that special room. A lot of Muslims ain't gonna go through that special room. They're not gonna go through that door of light. But the door of light that Malcolm went through is a door of Shahada. Like Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he went through a door that took him to another room that showed him with Allah, the greatness of Allah by being a martyr, by being assassinated, by dying fighting for God. Everybody doesn't go through that door. Malcolm was blessed to go from Satan to Shahada. I want you to take that consideration that as you read this book, this you're looking at, we have a saying here, brother Father Sheikh, he says, man, Malcolm is our Ayatollah. He is our sign, meaning that he's a sign of God, meaning Malcolm went from the worst to worst to Shahada. That journey is also being read, because I was listening to some of your other speakers and they talk about the blackness and Malcolm being black. Look, Malcolm's life is important as a journey for all colors and races, because it's a journey to light, through light, and then experiencing light in the end. So I just want to say that because I like how you read it, but I just like to tell students when you read the book, take in consideration that he's taking a journey. You should take a journey. I mean, we all should take a journey and connect with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with that said, Yuri and Malcolm, excuse me. I'm a little eccentric, so you have to deal with me. I just can't see my shirt. I have a Black Panther shirt on. So today was Huey P. Newton's birthday, for those who don't know, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, and they put a mural for him, so I had to go down there and get back in town, so I'm a little thirsty. Okay, so Malcolm and Yuri Kochiyama. Most of you guys probably say, who is Yuri Kochiyama, right? Yuri Kochiyama was I'll start with her. She was a Japanese activist who was put in an intern camp, and her name was Mary Kochiyama at the time. And little by little, she became an activist and everything in Harlem. And she had a Japanese family. And so her family started working with the NAACP, civil rights activists and everything. And they were like the only Black family, Japanese family in Harlem. And so in her process, they did a lot of stuff teaching. They used to have this Saturday night house where they invite everybody to their house, right? They had a newsletter called Christmas Carol. And when the 4 little girls were bombed by the KKK in Alabama, she actually made them change, and they stopped celebrating Christmas that year that the 4 little girls were killed in the Alabama church bomb. So she already was an activist at first, and I think that's very important in understanding her connection with Malcolm X. So Yuri, the first time she met Malcolm, she said she was at they were at a protest in Brooklyn. Malcolm, he has this big entourage. He's a nation from this big entourage, and he's walking. And she says she sticks her hand out and says, hey. Malcolm in his Nation Islam entourage just walked past her, and she says, can I shake your hand? And Malcolm says, as he's walking, why do you want to shake my hand? So he's like, keep walking, paying no mind to her. And she says, I like what you're doing for your people. And at that time, Malcolm stopped in front of all those people with his bodyguards and went back and shook her hand. And when he shook her hand, that was the first meeting they had and everything. And then he said, well, hey, stay in contact with him. So she would always write letters to Malcolm, for him back and forth. And this is when he was in Nation Islam. So when Malcolm leaves the Nation Islam, it's very important for us to understand that a lot of people who know Malcolm, they don't talk about this part of his life. The last years of his life, to me, are the most salient, because that's when you understand what Malcolm's philosophy really is about. So she contacts him later, and she says he ended up going to Mecca. And so Malcolm goes to Hajj, he goes to Mecca, and we all know how he transforms. He starts to see the internationalism of Islam. One of the stories, and we made Fatiha for Dr. Malik Badri. Dr. Malik Badri was a person, and he died like this week, I think, like the last couple of days within the week. But Dr. Malik Badri was a brother who was Sudanese. Just tell you this backstory. And Malcolm, in I think 59, went to Africa. So Malcolm had went to Sudan. And when he went to Sudan, he was in a nation of Islam, believing black man is God. And so Dr. Malik Badri was like, man, I got to go talk to this Malcolm guy, because this Malcolm guy, he has the wrong religion. And he says he gets there. And when he gets there, he says to Malcolm, He said, man, you know what? I'm not going to debate him about the fiqh. I'm not going to debate him about this Akita stuff, right? He says, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show him Islam and show him what it's like. So he took him to Durban and he let Malcolm see Islamic family and Islamic culture and everything, right? But it didn't really affect Malcolm, he thought. So Malcolm comes back to America and they would correspond here and there. And so then all of a sudden, Malcolm goes to Mecca, he takes Hajj, but he had contact and he knew about this Sudanese guy who influenced him about true Islam. They show you how Allah guides through life. And he says, after Hajj, Malcolm did not go, people don't realize, from Jeddah back to America. Malcolm goes to Lebanon because when he was in Hajj, he met a Sudanese guy and said, have you ever heard Dr. Malik Badri? They said, yeah. He teaches at American University in Beirut. So Malcolm says, wow. So Malcolm goes and he flies to Beirut. Here's how he changes his ticket. He's flying. Remember, this is the first person he goes to see after Mecca. He's a new Muslim. He goes, he flies to Beirut. He gets to Beirut and he walks to the University of American University. Because he thinks, he's a professor. He sees an African. He says, hey, how you doing? They show you how Allah guys. He says, I'm looking for Dr. Malik Badri. Do you know him? He says, oh, that's my uncle. And surprise, right? And so he says, okay, fine. He takes him to the house. Dr. Malik Badri says, Malcolm calls him, hello? He says, who is this? And he said, I knew it was Malcolm because I know the voice. But he said, I'm sorry, it's emotional because the story's so beautiful to me. He says to him, he said, it's El Hajj Malik Shabazz. Where he didn't even say Malcolm X, he used his name from Hajj. And Malik Badri always thought that he believed that Malcolm took his name, Malik Shabazz, from Malik Badri, because that was his first name, Dr. Malik Badri. So he says, him and Malcolm have dinner and everything, and they talk. And so he says, well, Malcolm, let me get you to speak at the American University. So he goes through all this process trying to get Malcolm to speak at American University, and they go all the way to the president of the university, who calls the U.S. State Embassy, and they say, whatever you do not let Malcolm speak at the university, just don't. So Malcolm, he said, okay, no problem. And then he said that, well, we'll do this though. He says, I'm going to go to the Sudanese Cultural Center and let them have a speech. So he says they go and they put flyers that Malcolm X speak at the Sudanese embassy, cultural section. And he said he got there was like 5,000 people flooding the streets to come hear Malcolm X speak, all cultures and races, right? And he gives this beautiful speech, and we don't really have it, but he talks. I have it in part of it in this book right here. You see, this is the Diary of Malcolm X. So we have all this account of Malcolm's account of when he went to Beirut. And the Dr. Badri, before he passed away, you might be able to find it on YouTube. He speaks to this. I'm telling you from his account of Malcolm. But what he said, Malcolm said, I thought was beautiful, beautiful from the point of view of being a lover of Imam Hussein. He told Malik Badri, he said, look, man, they're going to kill me. He was talking, he knew he was going to be killed. He came back and said, I get it. He accepted this concept of Shahada. So Malcolm, after he made that meeting, then he comes back. But once he comes back, he had already set up the MMI, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, but Malcolm goes on from there to set up the Organization of African American Unity, which was connected to like the Organization of African Unity. And this is extremely important that he set up these two different organizations. One, the MMI, was to learn true Islam. He came back learning true Islam. The other one was the Organization of African American Unity, where it didn't make a difference what your religion was, what race, or what race you were, long as you want to help Black African American people in a human rights movement. I'm gonna repeat that, not civil rights. Malcolm now became an internationalist and wanted human rights to be the objective. And so I say that because he came back, and when he came back, he got in contact with Yuri. And Yuri had three people who were nuclear Holocaust survivors of Hiroshima, and they wanted to meet Malcolm. And she said, Malcolm, she didn't think he showed up. He showed up, he came, he met the family and everything, he talked to him. And at that time, I say this word recruit because some people may not use it. I think he recruited Yuri. He says, I'm making this new organization, the African American Organization of African American Unity. I want you to join. So Yuri was like, fine. She joins up. So now you have this civil rights activist Yuri, and you have Malcolm, human rights activist, and they come together. Why do they come together? I'm friends with Yuri's family, right? I was talking to her daughter, Audie, who actually met Malcolm, and her granddaughter, and we were talking, and they made a point. They said Yuri was the Twitter of 1960s and 70s, meaning that if you wanted any information on the on Malcolm X, on militancy, on activism, Yuri just kept documents. All she did was write, and keep notes. And her writing penmanship is awesome. She just kept notes on everything. And so she went through this process, Japanese woman, and she became Malcolm's confidant of writing stuff about Malcolm. Yuri was so close to Malcolm that, again, I'm friends with Quabilla Shabazz, Malcolm's daughter, and she told me only 3 people were allowed to cook food for Malcolm when he came back from America. Obviously, Betty, his wife, Sister Sandra, who was a secretary, and Yuri Kochiyama. So that'll show you how close Yuri was, that she was like, he trusted her with cooking food. Yuri's connection to Malcolm was so powerful that she got and absorbed not the Nation of Islam Malcolm, but to internationalize Malcolm, the militant Malcolm, the Malcolm who wanted to make a big difference and change. And so what happens after this is she joins up. In July, Malcolm leaves again. So Malcolm was American, and he leaves again. He goes to Africa, to Egypt, to the Organization of African Unity Conference, and he's trying to get them to support his measure to have the case of the African Americans brought to the United Nations. I'll say it again. Malcolm wanted to bring the case of African Americans to the United Nations so the whole world could see that this was a human rights issue. Now, that was very powerful because many people wouldn't want Malcolm to get to the United Nations, because if he gets to the United Nations, then he can show the whole world, look what's going on. Dr. King was trying to ask America to fix the problem. Malcolm did not believe America could fix the problem because they were the problem. So Malcolm chose to go to the United Nations above and say, this is the problem, and it's the issue of human rights. Well, Malcolm needed to get a country. One country has to give you permission to speak on their platform. So he goes here and he tries to get on, and he meets a guy named Babu Abdurrahman, right, from Tanzania. And they did not get a chance to talk to nobody like about the platform or speak at the conference. What Malcolm did was he got a letter put in, like, in the agenda to be read, which was a big thing for him. But while Malcolm's traveling on this trip, he takes Umrah again. He goes to Kuwait. He's writing Yuri Kochiyama. I wish I had him. I've seen, like, he's writing her letters and postcards to her family. So he's keeping her in the loop on what's going on. You know, he's keeping the loop. So he's contacting her, sending messages, keeping her basically, to me, prepared for when he comes back. Well, one thing also Malcolm did was, and I'm writing about this later, is Malcolm goes to, in this book right here, right, his diary, he says he was doing a tour of Egypt. And he said, I went to the shrine of Imam Hussein. Now, for many Shia who are Ithna Sharia, we believe Imam Hussein alayhi salam's body and head and everything is in Karbala. But the Fatimids, who were Shias, and they actually started the Fatimid Empire's capital was today Cairo. They believed and said that the head of Imam Hussein was in Cairo. And they said Zainab is buried in Cairo. And then people don't realize that Al-Azhar University, the oldest Sunni university, is named after Fatima Zahra, after Zahra. So there was this connection with the Fatimids with Fatima. And I think it's incredible because even if we don't believe, or people don't believe, and we don't believe, and others may believe that the head is there, when Malcolm gets to visit and makes that ziyarah to the head of Imam Hussein, that when he believed in the head, he had to ask the people, well, who is Hussein and why does he have a shrine? And so I said it because it's evident that Malcolm understood and learned the story of Imam Hussein, because the tragedy of Imam Hussein from Shia Sunnis is the same. Tragedy is how you look at it. So I say here that here's Malcolm, what I think is so beautiful, learning about Imam Hussein, and then visiting the shrine, Zainab. So now he has an idea of who these people are in their quest for truth, and they're standing up for light. For the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when he leaves Egypt, Malcolm goes to Tanzania. Another beautiful story. So Babu Abdurrahman, who was a revolutionary in what was then Tanganyika, he gets Malcolm hooked up to meet the president, Julius Nyerere. And the funny thing is, he only had 3 minutes. He said, Malcolm, I can get you 3 minutes. I'm just ahead of state, 3 minutes. Because they were like kind of trying to stay away from Malcolm because they knew he was dangerous. And in 3 minutes, Malcolm goes, he talks to him. And that 3-minute conversation turned into a 3-hour conversation because Julius Nyerere was totally mesmerized by Malcolm's talk. And so Malcolm starts to build. And he says, look, I got people in Africa who want to build and go to the United Nations. Then he goes to Ghana. And he meets, for you guys, if you want to read another book, read Maya Angelou, poet, one of the best poets in American history. He meets Maya Angelou. He recruits Maya Angelou. Look, Maya, I need you to come to America and help me build an OAU. So Malcolm along the way is building the Islamic part with the Muslims. He has scholarship to Al-Azhar and all that stuff. But at the same time, Malcolm's doing what? He's building a revolutionary front with other revolutionaries like Yuri and Maya Angelou. So he comes back. When Malcolm comes back, he gets to the OAU. He says, look, we got to build this organization. To me, what's important is that organization was not based in blackness. It was based in justice. It was focusing on the black issue, but the black issue through the lens of Tawheed, let's say the lens of justice or the lens of unity of revolutionary people. So Malcolm goes through that phase. He comes back, right? And he starts to build that organization. Now, I was saying this, and I'll show a clip here. To me, personally, in my understanding of Malcolm, his revolutionary and his activism starts to grow. And a lot of people love Malcolm. They miss that part, and they really, really just focus on Malcolm, the what do you call that? The blackness, the black nationalist. So this is something, since you're on the other side of the pond, I think you enjoy. I just want to listen to the last 3 minutes of his speech here at Oxford.
The racialist never understands a peaceful language. The racialist never understands the nonviolent language. The racialist, he's spoken his language to us for 400 years. We have been the victim of his brutality. We are the ones who face his dogs that tear the flesh from our limbs, only because we want to enforce the Supreme Court decision. We are the ones who have our skulls crushed, not by the Ku Klux Klan, but by policemen, only because we want to enforce what they call the Supreme Court decision. We are the ones upon whom water hoses are turned with pressure so hard that it rips the clothes from our back. Not men, but the clothes from the backs of women and children. You've seen it yourself. Only because we want to enforce what they call the law. Well, anytime you live in a society supposedly based upon law, and it doesn't enforce its own law because the color of a man's skin happens to be wrong, then I say those people are justified to resort to any means necessary to bring about justice where the government can't give them justice. I don't believe in any form of unjustified extremism, but I believe that when a man is exercising extremism, a human being is exercising extremism in defense of liberty for human beings, it's no vice. And when one is moderate in the pursuit of justice for human beings, I say he's a sinner. And I might add in my conclusion, in fact, America is one of the best examples when you read its history about extremism. Old Patrick Henry said liberty or death. That's extreme. Very extreme. I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, to be or not to be. He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to share that because I think that's the Malcolm in December 1964.
Front page challenge.
All right, for a minute, turn this thing on.
Negro leader Malcolm X.
Sorry about that. There we go. And I was saying that, to me, people miss that Malcolm. He says, I don't care what color you are. as long as you want to fight for justice. This is something that people get, and I think for a lot of Black national people, they don't want people to talk about that Malcolm. But when he says, I don't care what color you are, he's talking to Yuri Kochiyama. He's talking to the white revolutionary who joined the Weather Underground. He's talking to the brown. He's talking to the Asian. He's talking to everybody to see the African-American struggle as an issue of civil rights. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and, you know, nowadays we have this identity politics. And, you know, and a lot of Muslims jumped on the bandwagon. Oh, Black Lives Matter. I'm like, what is this Black Lives Matter? When are we all of a sudden we mattered since George Floyd died? We didn't matter since Adam, if you want to keep it real. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to understand that when identity politics brings about disunity, then we're not for identity politics. But when identity politics brings unity, it's good. So I should be able to talk about my Blackness, and you should be able to appreciate that. But I don't need to talk about my Blackness and make you feel bad about your whatever yourness is. It's all about unity and wahda, which to me is the foundation of Islam, Tawheed. So when you look at Malcolm, he actually has strengthened the Black position. And he's telling everybody, hey, man, we got to work together for the human rights of African Americans. So when he comes back, check this out. He meets, remember I told you Abdurrahman Babu? He was him in Tanzania. This was a cold international revolutionary. So Malcolm was connecting with these revolutionaries. And so after he gets back from England and has that place in England, then all of a sudden he goes back and he hooks up. He tried it with Che Guevara. I don't know you know who Che Guevara is, right? So he's hooking up with Che. So he's talking to Che. And y'all know, and Che ended up leaving the United Nations to go to Africa. Some people say they speculate he didn't meet Che. We know Che did send a letter to a meeting at the OAU. My sources have told me that they did meet, and my sources are extremely close because my sources were with Malcolm at that time. But the brother's passed away now. But the point I'm making is that Malcolm was internationalizing the movement and connecting with revolutionaries above and beyond the, what do you call that? The aspect of Black America. I actually have a letter Yuri's daughter sent me where Yuri kept notes. And when he was in Africa, in this note, he says, I do not want to fight with nobody. I do not even want to fight with Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. This go. He says, I want to work with people to make the world a better place and fight for human rights. So that gets buried. But now the Nation of Islam still had problems when he came back. But he was technically trying to unify with, I mean, not unify, work with people and just not argue with Elijah Muhammad. He thought it was unproductive to argue when there was so much work to do. So he comes back and he sets up, and he comes back, and then he goes back to set up OAU. He goes to Selma. He goes to LA. A lot of people know he went to LA, and he had the Nation of Islam they chased him on the freeway to LAX and everything because they were trying to get him. So he had a lot going on, and then his house gets bombed. To show you how important Yuri was, all the top people in Malcolm's organization were at Yuri's house that night because she had Saturday night open house. All of them were here. They heard the news of his house be bombed and left Yuri's house to his house. Okay, so I want to show you how she's connecting with Malcolm. Malcolm's connecting with her, and she's picking up and writing and absorbing his internationalism. And so on the day, I'll share this picture with you. On the day, she's at the Outer Ballroom. Hang on one second. And so you can get to see this picture here. Oh, did the picture pop up?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so you guys see that's Malcolm. When Malcolm was assassinated and shot and fell on the ground, the first person on the stage is the Japanese woman right there, above his head. And to me, you know, I say this of the message, but I also say it for the Shahada. Yuri Kochiyama plays Zainab to Malcolm's Imam Hussein. When you think of Imam Hussein alayhi salam being martyred, Zainab played the role of leader and continued the message. Zainab was there for Imam Hussein when he was like Yuri Kochiyama. Look, I know people were there. They said, I mean, who in research said Yuri ran up on stage. Bullets were flying all over the place. She's the first one to run up on stage. And they said that she was like trying to get him out from house to get him back in line. I always say this though, she had the beauty that Allah blessed her to touch the lips of a shaheed. Like, I don't know, like for her lips to have touched and breath the breath of a martyr. And I say it because at me, I love Imam Hussein alayhi salam, right? And so to me, when we say Imam Jafar the Sadiq alayhi salam said, Kullu yawmin ashila kullu armin qarabla. I mean, the Audubon Barber, this is Carmela. You know what I'm saying? This is played out. Malcolm wasn't out there killing nobody. He was martyred. And Yuri was there for him, and she was there. I mean, and she supported him. She was with him in the whole process and everything. And when he was martyred, she supported him. Now, after the martyrdom, this is what I talk about Yuri. Yuri continued to put up and fight more than any person the legacy of Malcolm X. Every person I know who was a top revolutionary, all went through Yuri's house. The Black Panther Party were at Yuri's house. The BLA was at Yuri's house. The Weather Underground was at Yuri's house, right? Tupac Shakur, was a rapper, was at Yuri's house, right? Who's an activist, right? You got Dr. Matula Shakur here front. She always supported Dr. Matula Shakur. Marion Buck. She was the headquarters of all revolutionaries that followed Malcolm's path. And I'm just keeping going. It was not Betty Shabazz. Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's wife, when he died, she became an activist in her own right, but she was more like a civil rights activist. Yuri continued the international activism of Malcolm X all the way till she died, and she was 97 years old. As I saw her, I was at San Quentin prison, and they were executing Tukey Williams. She was protesting against it, and she had a walker, and she was walking, or to walker at a protest like at 90 years old, still going strong, but keeping the message and the light of what Malcolm was about, of this humanistic, unified fight for human rights for all colors and races. And Yuri, or she was with the Puerto Rican activist. She got arrested on the Statue of Liberty. So there's a lot I could talk about her, but I say it because I want just to get a light that she was an activist who really, really Malcolm trusted, and she continued his legacy. And I mean, she's the first person, a member of the Republic of New Africa, and she's not even Black. Why is Yuri important? Another thing people don't know, Yuri actually took Shahada and was Muslim between a certain time, and she took the name Fatima. Alhamdulillah. I said, hey, I mean, I liked you anyway, but you took the name Fatima. And but a lot of people don't know about Yuri and her sacrifice and her struggles, her documentations. They have many stuff about her, and I think she's important in today's time, because many people talk about, we have allies and allies. Black Lives Matter, you're our allies. Hey man, look, Malcolm X didn't have allies. Malcolm X had comrades. A comrade is somebody who, it doesn't make a difference with your colors. We're fighting for the same justice. We're fighting for the same peace. And this is why sometimes a lot of people get caught up with this identity politics, and they're doing more separating than unifying, right? And so I say it because they keep the message, but I want to end and then have some questions. But this is another video I just want to show you to give you, because I couldn't do a lot on Yuri, but this is a short video I just want to share so you can get an idea about her life and what she is. And the person speaking is Mumi Abu Jamal, who is a political prisoner in jail, and he's speaking about Yuri in this thing.
Political philosophy is not just something you obtain. It's something that you develop through your lifetime. And of course, as different events happen to you, and different people you meet, and people and writings that you read, your philosophy is going to change.
I got that third world militant, still think it's relevant, even if them kids cop the shirts and stop wearing them. Humbled in the presence of the veterans, and not the ones who picked up their guns, but who picked up their brethren and sisterin. History in the making, I was witnessing, listening. Seen this old Japanese lady with the sticker on her walker, said, "Free Mumia," and this was before the Trustafarians were saying it. Taking it for granted that we talk about the 60s and never get to talk to anybody who done lived the shit and still exists. Or better yet, she still resists. Speaking to a myriad of young, dumb, and ignorant kids, I was one of them. Stuck around lingering. Said that it's a privilege to meet you in person, and she took my hand, said it's good to meet you too. And when I'm out of school, asked me what I'm gonna do. I had to think about it, but truth is I knew that it was something for the youth and shit. Truly, I'd probably be a teacher if the music didn't make enough to make me wanna gamble on its sustenance. And that's why I'm writing this, to tell y'all, from a scholar, when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. Holla, swear to my Kasamas, when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. And if she ever hear this, it's an honor, cause when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. serve the people proper. And when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama.
The most powerful weapon for we women of color is truth. Go out and tell truth.
I seen the picture up in Life magazine. You were sitting front seat for Malcolm's last speech. Saw the first man with the shotgun. 2 more came to get the job done. Now who would have thought that it'd be you holding him? I wonder what you felt when his eyes were going dim. And if he never died, would we know that he exists? Or would he been the leader that we always seem to miss? Now there's no taking back whatever happens in our midst. You remind me that it's more than just a martyr and a myth. You could have said it quits many times ever since, and you find there will always be a reason for the fist. The last one to hold them could have been somebody else. You'd still be remembered for the people that you helped. They said to keep trying, but never losing hope. Revolutionaries die, but the revolution don't, and it won't. And I put that on my mama, cause when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. Holla, swear to my Kasamas. When I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. And if she ever hear this, it's an honor, cause when I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama. Comma, serve the people proper. When I grow up, I wanna be just like Yuri Kochiyama.
The United States of America is a nation where people are not united because of those 3 glaring frailties: racism, injustices, and inequities. It is up to all of us to fight this mental and emotional pollution wherever and whenever it is detected.
The legacy I would like to leave is that people try to build bridges and not walls.
Yuri Kochiyama, freedom fighter, after 93 summers, has become an ancestor. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
I wanted to, for me, he asked me what to speak about. I speak about Yuri because I'm emotional like her. Just like she is, I love my love of Malcolm. You can't but love Yuri. And I say it because I am critical of the Muslim community and the fact that I see a 93-year-old Asian woman to be active to the day of her death and always helping and fighting and unifying. When I see a woman like Yuri taking on the mantle of Zainab al-Kubra, it's incredibly, it shows the power of what I say light. And when I mean light, because Allah's light is what's guiding Yuri Kochiyama. You know what I'm saying? Allah's light is guiding Malcolm. And we should ask Allah to give us that light and that nur. And I say it because light is so important. I'm going to end with this. We have some questions. I was in Iran one time and I had this Ayatollah, Ayatollah Shah, right? And I said, bro, give me some advice. I'm going in America. What should we do in America, right? And, you know, I say this because what he says just to me, but it's for all of us, especially the Muslims on here, where he says, there's a hadith where Prophet Muhammad said, Ya Ali, he said, if you guide one person to Islam, it is better than all that the sun shines upon. So how the sun shines, the light of the sun shines upon the mountains, the ocean, the beauty of the earth, the gold, everything that the light shines upon, and from the sun on the earth, it is better if one person is guided to Allah. And then he said, but in Arabic, the word for sun, shams, is actually can be used as plural. So you could actually look at it, it's not that it's the sun, it's that all the suns in the world, so there's in the universe, all the light, that if you guide one person to Islam, it is better than all that the light of the universe shines upon. And I look at that because we as a community, we have a lot of cleaning up and purification in our community so that our community becomes the light of truth and guidance and not something that's disrespectful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know what I'm saying? Now we know there's different problems historically since the Shahada, you know what I'm saying, where our community has fallen to different things of extremes on both ends. But I do believe that when we talk about people like Malcolm X and we talk about him in conjunction with Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we can see that the light of Allah, we need to purify ourselves and purify our hearts, that we become walking lights. Like every time that we walk, if somebody sees us or we talk, they should see the light by Allah's grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our behavior, and let that be an influence, because I believe Shaheed Malcolm and Sister Yuri are examples of beautiful lights who carry the light message of oneness and Tawheed, of the oneness of God, the oneness of people, human rights, and at the same time, they stood their ground. And one was a martyr and one died of old age, but they never stopped fighting for what's truth and justice based on what they understood. So I'm happy to be able to just introduce you to Yuri. I asked you to look up. She has a book right here. You can order it. I don't know. It's called this light in my room. Yuri Kochiyama, Heartbreak of Struggle and Everything. This is a book, the beautiful book written by her. You can order probably. I'm gonna say it. And it has another book. I don't know where's it at right now. And it's her autobiography book. I got a bunch of books I can't find. See, but you can look on the internet, but find out more about her. Look at her videos and stuff like that, because again, you know, she is my Zainab. And so you my Zainab. She's out there, and just like Imam Hussein was martyred, Zainab continued his mission. Yuri Kochiyama kept alive the mission, the true mission, I believe, of unity and human rights of Malcolm X. Thank you for letting me the opportunity to speak. I seldom speak anymore. But Brother Muhammad and guys, you guys are so nice to me and everything. And I like things that are in England, right? I watched this TV program called Endeavor, right? And in the TV show Endeavor, they were walking through his room, I was saying, and they had a poster that said 1964, Malcolm X speaks in Oxford. And I was like, wow, you know, people in England are actually, you know, showing stuff dealing with Malcolm. I would say that, again, learn about Yuri, learn about Malcolm, and teach about Yuri, teach about Malcolm. And by all means, everything you do, ask Allah to give us light and nur and guide us to his light and guide us to his oneness and his greatest divine unity. And let's be beacons of light and show the world the beauty of Islam, and especially through the sacrifice of Hussein ibn Ali and the Ahlul Bayt. And inshallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that light that is behind the clouds. It's funny we talk about light. The hadith that says Imam Mahdi alayhi salam is like the sun behind the clouds. Even if you don't see it, you feel the heat and the warmth and the presence of him. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he send Imam Zaman alayhi salam with Prophet Jesus as soon as possible, because surely we are all living in darkness and we seek the light of God. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, and thank you again. His sister Ella took over the OAU and it didn't survive. It ended up it went away, and the Muslim House Incorporated never developed. You got to remember, when Malcolm was killed, people were scared of Malcolm, and so people try to avoid anything dealing with him. What happened was those people ended up joining the Black Panther Party, which was eventually destroyed by COINTELPRO. I mean, there's a movie out. It's not the best movie, but it's worth looking at, called Judas and the Black Messiah, that shows how the FBI went out to destroy the Black Panther Party. What's interesting about that title, you may not know, is that when the FBI in COINTELPRO, it says prevent the rise of a Black Messiah. That's where they got the title of the movie from. But the movie forgets. It says Malcolm X was that Black Messiah. They black it out. I mean, so it's funny. Malcolm X was the Black Messiah that they wanted to make sure would never electrify the youth of today. And so I would say, no, those organizations didn't survive and go forward, but they merged into other organizations like the Black Panther Party and other civil rights, and even other civil rights organizations. Yes. People killed Malcolm because Malcolm was willing to be a militant and fight back. And for many people in that time frame, it was like, let's sit back and let's wait. But Malcolm was like, no. Like Malcolm was the one to fight back with guns and arms to defend themselves. I was talking to a friend today, like the Black Panther Party, people feared them because they had the guns. Well, the bottom line is it was called the Black Panther Party, and people forget this all the time, of self-defense, meaning they weren't going out killing people, they were just defending themselves. And so a lot of people were scared because Malcolm talked so radical and so strong, they thought that the authorities would come in and do stuff to him. But guess what? They're right. That happened to him. You know, so Malcolm's fear people had for him was that from brown people. I personally believe the government's fear of Malcolm X is that Malcolm had became Muslim and internationalized the movement, and he stopped being a black national, a racist. He became somebody like that clip I showed you of Oxford University. That to me is what I believe they fear. when he says, I'm willing to work with anybody, I don't care their color, for justice. Because he was dynamic, he was charismatic, and he was so humble in his heart that he was willing to unify people of all colors and races for justice. Somebody said they think he's too extreme, but they don't understand how the systematic issue he was speaking is. Yeah, she's right. Like he was extreme, but he's talking extreme. But the one thing about Malcolm's beauty is, I say his sincerity. You know, it's funny because, you know, in the Quran, you know, I get khutbah, so sometimes I feel like I read khutbah. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this, beautiful ayah. He says, Shaitan says, I will tempt them on the path, right? So you're on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. He's out from the front, the back, the right. So devil says, I'm going to get them from every side. And what does Allah in the Quran tells us? He says, you shall not get those who are mukhlis. He didn't say you can't get the ones who have the most knowledge, who have the biggest imam on, who has a doctorate, who has the most money. Allah says you won't get those who are sincere. And so sincerity of heart is when I look at Malcolm. Malcolm's heart was sincere. See, I make mistakes. People make mistakes. But it's the sincerity. I think Malcolm's sincerity is what was connected to his life that he was able to share with the world. Good question. I did a lot of work like that. I am in the grave. I'm in the unseen world, right? I disappeared for you guys, right? So right now, I just kind of work with brothers and sisters on an individual basis, building family structure. America's a little interesting now. So I don't have a masjid, inshallah, in the future. The Prophet Muhammad said the earth was a masjid. So to me, I try to talk about Islam, and I really am in a place now where I'm back. I like doing dawah. I like talking to non-Muslims, you know. I was telling somebody the other day, you know, I get upset when Muslims complain about, you know, the LGBT community, but they don't tell them nothing about Islam. I mean, what you mad? I mean, I was at a protest, and there's one girl, and it's sort of opposite, right, where it says he frowned. And I look at the signs Allah sends me to humble me when I'm out of check. So I was sitting there, and me and this one girl, she was the head, I was president of black students. She was the president of the, well, at that time, the lesbian students. And we protested, but I never spoke to her. And she sat next to me in class. Never spoke to her. And she said, hey, can I ask you a question? I said, what? She goes, why don't you ever talk to me about your religion or anything? It's because I'm gay, right? And I said, that's deep. She caught me. I was like, yeah, that's probably a fact. And she says, how do you know I wouldn't be interested in it? And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm wrong. And I accept that criticism because I think that sometimes our religion blinds us to, and we become like Surah Abasa, where the person frown when the blind person want to learn Islam. And so what I do now is, instead of having a masjid, I think that the streets, the corners, the place where no one wants to go, that's where I need to go. And I'm talking about Allah and his messenger and everything, because I think the Prophet Muhammad came down a hill to a bunch of idol worshipers, and he didn't go hide in the house, did he? He went out and let those people who were considered the people of Jahiliyyah, you know, to give them guidance, or at least let them see beauty. And I just try to work with all people and talk to the world and let them see the beauty of Islam. You know, if the Prophet would have never came down that cave, we all be lost right now, wouldn't we? Now, what you said about Bibi Zainab is my, like I was in Iran, we had this discussion, you know, weird discussion. Who is, other than Imam was saying, who do you love at Karbala? And everybody says Abbas or Ali Akbar. Me, Zainab. Zainab is like that to me, because I was raised by a single black woman. And so to me, to see a woman in position of leadership, that to me is like incredible, especially under those circumstances. And so people don't realize that, if you think about it deeply, at the time that Imam Zayn al-Abidin was sick, if you want to learn anything about your religion, you would have to go to Zainab al-Kubra. Allah made her, so her walayat, here's the walayat of a woman who the scars are stashed on her head. She's seen her whole family. And when she goes to see Yazid and she says, Ya Ahla Kufa, you know, and she's talking this dynamic, beautiful talk. To me, I'm seeing Yuri Kochiyama, right? Angela Davis, you know, there's so many women who stand up for justice and they speak the truth. And they don't know who Zainab is. They don't even know who she is. But we have this beautiful woman and we keep her to ourselves. Shame on us. So I think that every time we can connect whatever's going on, whether it's the Black Lives Movement, whether it's any movement of people trying to make the world better, we should be out there in the forefront and let them see us. Maybe they don't become Muslim. That ain't on us. Allah guys, I didn't say Hashim guides to his light. He says Allah guides to the light. All I'm doing is trying to be out there and be the best person. So the person who mentioned Zainab, look, I think that for a Muslim woman especially, yo, y'all got to be Zainabi type women and go out there. And if you married and you got a husband, you got to tell him, hey, check us out. I'm Zainab. That's what you should do. So if you're not married, you know, as a Muslim woman, the men might get mad at me, right? You can go and you can put in your contract, right, with that pen, right? Say, hey, this is what I want in my contract, right? A lot of people don't know. Zainab put in her contract to her husband, I will obey you as your husband, but if Imam will say, my brother, go someplace, you give me permission. Look at the beauty of Zainab, that she continued to be obedient to, to be within the structure of the wife of her husband without violating the wilayat of her brother. You see that how she, and I say it because, you know, maybe sometimes sisters got to tell their husband, look, if you gonna sit at home and be a jellyfish, I'm sorry, because you shouldn't have married a jellyfish in the first place, right? But if you're with some guy and he's not gonna be active and you want to be active, just, you know, remember Zaynab when you fill out your marriage contract. Sorry to cause any problems in any marriages, just trying to make a revolutionary household, that's all. The second question is interesting. Malcolm probably never knew what a Shia and Sunni war. They didn't say Sunni Islamic because that's what he got. But in this book right here, this is the weirdest thing. He talks about when he lands in Jeddah. So he's in Jeddah and he says, I'm sitting here and I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I mean, not scared, but I was, you know, like amazed. And he said, these white Muslims kept coming up offering him food. And every time he wanted to offer them food. And he like, you know, he's like, it was just so nice to me. And then they'd go sleep. Then they come back, Brother Malcolm, here's some other food, right? And I said, them had to be Shias, right? Because, but it was some Iranians. He said they were Iranian pilgrims and they kept on bothering me and offering me food. So I figured he didn't learn Charof yet, you know what I'm saying? So I would assume that his first interaction with Shias had to be the Persian, Hujjaj that were with him. But he probably didn't know the difference between Shia and Sunni, but he did learn about Imam Hussein in Egypt. And that story is something that is universal, maybe different things about what it would mean. But going to the second question, you know, Jafar Sadiq said, Kullu Yaman Ashula, Kullu Ardin Karbala. I don't think Shia Muslims understand that. Somebody once said to me, I said, Shia Muslims don't understand the line of Imam Khomeini, of Wahda and unity. They said, Hashim, they don't understand Imam Hussein. They go to Majalis, they hit themselves, they beat themselves, they cry, but they never understand the universal mission of Imam Hussein. If we study Imam Hussein alayhi salam's work, and you can see how Malcolm is, without even knowing him spiritually, is on the same concept. Imam Hussein, they write the letters from Kufa to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They say, come to us, we need a leader. They write at the bottom, you're Shia, the Shia of Hussein. He writes them back the letter, and he does not address Shia. He says, I come for the what? Allah and the religion of Muhammad. So you look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that he's never telling himself he's a Shia, he's fighting for humanity and everybody. And I think that for many Sunnis and other people who know Imam Hussein, we Shias sometimes make it like he's ours and don't share him. And what are you talking about? I used to do, there's a Sunni masjid, and for black people, it's good because they don't care about that Shia Sunni stuff. We all just Muslims and we misfits anyway, right? So we have our programs at the Sunni mosque because they love Imam Hussein. I mean, how you not gonna love Imam Hussein? Gandhi loved Imam Hussein. I mean, it's not possible unless you're a Yazidi person that don't like, you know, Imam Hussein, right? But I say, I know this. It's funny. This story. I was in. You ever see that picture? It's like Zul Jannah and all the women with your door. It's a famous picture, right? And then they have another picture. I had another picture. It was like rolled up. So I was coming from Iran, and, you know, in the airplane, I had it rolled up. So I had to get it rolled so it was wrinkled. So in Berkeley, California, I could get it put on a piece of wood to put it up. Where is he going with this story? And you like this? You like, you know what I'm saying? Like so. So I go to give it to the place. I come back 2 weeks later. They show it to me. 2 old white women show it to me, and it's on a piece of wood. And I'm like, oh, good, this looks good. So as I'm going and I'm folding up, they say, hey, what is it? And I'm like, man, I gotta go. So as I'm walking, someone says, you know, maybe that angel, Officer Hash, you're not doing the right thing. I don't care. These 2 70-year-old women want to know, go back and tell them. So I go back and I said, well, this calligraphy is about a man named Imam Hussein. And then I thought about that horse. And this is like 2003. I said, how do you explain Imam Hussein to people who don't know, right? And I said, oh, I said, you see that horse? She said, yeah. I said, Because it's not after 9/11. I say that the man of that horse was never killed. It never would have been a 9/11. Like, if Sayyid ibn Ali lives, the whole world doesn't look the same way. It's because of Shahada that we have to deal with ISIS. It's because of Shahada we deal with terrorism. Like, remember, Bani Hashim are the first victims of terrorism in the world. And we have to understand that. So in the world where you have terrorism, why are we not saying, look, we are the victims? The Prophet's family was killed. And so I told them the story, I was saying short, and I look over here, 2 7-year-old white women crying. So what am I gonna do? If your future is connected to love, if your future is connected to God, how can it not be connected to Sayyid ibn Ali? And I think that for us, we should learn more about the story and how to tell this story to a world who doesn't know him. And that is why I think that people misunderstand, even some Shias, we misunderstand the legacy of Imam Hussein and Zainab. Zainab took the story. Remember, Zainab is in Syria because when she came back to Medina, she told everybody what the justice of whatever Imam Hussein. Bani Umayyad puts her in house arrest in Syria. She's in Syria because she was continuing to speak the truth. Where are we at? Inshallah, we learn from Zainab Kubra to continue the message and carry the torch of Imam Hussein. So I hope that, sorry for the motion, but you know, to me, Ashura is every day, man. Well, Ella was the one who gave him the money to go to Hajj, and she actually left the Nation of Islam and became a Quran and Sunnah Muslim before Malcolm, and she gave him the money. So again, this is this woman again giving Malcolm money to make the Hajj, and then she actually tried to take over the Organization of African American Unity, afterwards, but she didn't have the charisma and the power to keep it going, you know. But she did attempt to keep it alive, keep it going. No, I mean, because I know every community is different, but it's funny you say, I was in Houston, right? And I say this because, you know, I'm not a good Muslim all the time, but I don't mind talking about when I made a sin or bad, right? I did a program on Malcolm X at a big Shia center in Houston, and it was for Imam Hussein, and I put up all the different martyrs in Islamic from different countries. So I threw Malcolm in there, right? Well, I threw Malcolm in. And man, this dude said to me, I won't say his race, he said, why you got Malcolm in there? You don't put him in. They didn't want me to put Malcolm in a group of martyrs that were Muslims. They saying, you know, let alone Imam Hussein. And I was so mad. I went to the house and I was gonna get a pistol. And I was gonna hit him in the head with a nut. I was just like, this crazy, right? And then I go over there and my friend comes, hey Hash, let it go. But it angers me because that is the racism that's in the Muslim community, that they think they can pick and choose who's a shaheed or who is a martyr, you know. And it's incredible because there's a word. Have you guys ever heard the saying, say the Shahada? That Malcolm, Imam Hussein, is say the Shahada. He's the master of all martyrs. Right. So I was like, well, hang on for a minute. People been martyred after Imam Hussein and they got killed. I mean, so I asked him, Allah, what does that mean? He said, say the Shahada means this, that everybody who is martyred after Imam Hussein is as if they were with Imam Hussein at Karbala. Look at the beauty of that, that you're saying, no. So Malcolm, we're not comparing Malcolm, we're saying Malcolm lived a life and we see him as a martyr. So we can look at him as being a member of those who are at Karbala because he's dying for the same stance. He's dying for the same love. And to me, you know, Dr. King and Little Bobby, I mean, there's different forms of ways that you can die as Shaheed, and people don't get that. So I think for a lot of these scholars, they don't internationalize or even humanize to the point of seeing Imam Hussein's martyrdom as being a universal what do you call that, movement dying for truth and all, in which we call it. So, you know, are we comparing them? No, there's no comparison. But are we saying there's an intersection between them? There's obviously is. So maybe just find a way to say a word to appease them, but understand that every culture sometimes try to create martyrs, that their martyr is better than the next martyr, and that's just, you know, that's just shaitan in my opinion. We're not comparing blood, we're comparing right. I mean, even, you know, like white people died for righteousness. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got the problem with black people. They tell me, wait, you act like white people didn't do nothing for, you know, for justice. Like, it's like identity politics can be very detrimental. Trust me, when it's not understood in the correct manner. And I think Muslims do the same thing. No, you know, a statement is a question in its way in itself, but we can find something beautiful in that question. it's funny. I think Brother Muhammad, he's on this on the thing. One of my OG partners from Los Angeles, and me and him had we had the same idea that when you guys read in the Autobiography, remember there's a man who came to Malcolm in the cell. The movie shows that man to be Elijah Muhammad. I personally, Allah know best, I believe it was Imam Mahdi came to Malcolm in the prison because he did. He says a man came, he appeared, and when that man came, he changed his whole life. I think you realize. So you know what life? If you look at the book, he says a person appeared. I believe it was a human. It wasn't Elijah Muhammad. He said it was somebody came, and then that's when Malcolm gets on his knees and his journey begins. So to me, we know that Mahdi visits people. So I believe that you're right. Those people who are put in Malcolm's life, Allah puts people in people's lives to guide them. You know, I mean, I recently, look at my life and where I'm going. Allah blessed me with somebody to be in my life that's like, wow, taking me on my next step in journey, to his life and everything. And so I say that because, you're absolutely right that Allah brings people or things. It could be things. It could be concepts that serve as nurs or lamp or beacons, like a lighthouse, to continue on the journey back to him. So I think if you go through it, that's a beautiful analyzation of looking at Malcolm's life and picking the people that he's meeting up with and ask ourselves, is he picking them up or is Allah sending these people through his walayat? And the walayat of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, Imam Mahdi's working out. I mean, there's no, for most of it, for us who believe it, that, that unseen world is at work and that unseen world is guiding us. So I thought it was a very good point. I get emotional, like I can't, like I talked to her daughter, right? And I told her, I just like, she has teddy bears. Just give me a teddy bear. Well, first of all, I'm Black and Japanese, so that's another reason why it's like I feel this connection with her. But I'll tell you something. I have a picture Imam was saying in my living room, right? And so Malcolm X's grandson, he left Zainab in Syria to live with me. And so when he lived with me in Miami, he was martyred and killed in Mexico City. So his mother, Qabila Shabazz, Malcolm X's daughter, she actually is not a Muslim. She's actually a Quaker. She's not Muslim. The other ones are, she's not. And her thing was, if I'm going to be Muslim, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And a lot of the Muslims she met, she didn't understand their philosophy of Islam, so she became a Quaker. So when I was explaining her sons, he was Muslim, he was Shia actually, and I was trying to explain to her the funeral, and I couldn't explain to her. And I said, look, see this picture of Imam Hussein? So I explained Imam Hussein to her in Karbala. And Malcolm X's granddaughter says this. She says, I don't know that religion. And I thought, like, wow, I don't know that. I don't know that religion of Ahmed. Whatever the people around my father, they know Islam. They don't know that. That is different. That is special. And so we have a lot of work to do, sister. So inshallah, you carry that torch of Zainab Kubra every time in your life, okay?